to jump right in. I figure what we'll do instead of picking a particular order, I may pick someone to start with, but as you have opinions, please just chime in. So our first question, and Zaheen, maybe we can start with you. What are some common mistakes you see on internship or entry-level job applications?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I will say these are kind of like two sides of the same coin. Sometimes we'll see resumes where there's too much listed on them. So for example, like if you're a software engineering major, you might include like all the programming languages that you've ever learned. And so sometimes that can be like an indicator to, well, are you just kind of, have you just shallowly learned each one? Like, are you an expert in any of them? And so being able to really refine which skills are your strongest and show them on your resume, I think is like the most important thing. So if you're listing like Java, Ruby, Scala, all the languages you've ever learned, a recruiter might be like, well, which one are you the best at, right? Or are you good at any of them? And so I think highlighting that, if you do want to list them all, at least putting them in some kind of ranking. And then I would say the other mistake that I see is sometimes not having enough description on your resume. Sometimes I'll see resumes that it almost looks like a reiteration of a job description. And while it's like important to know what your responsibilities are, what's just as, or if not more important, is knowing the impact that you had in that role. And so talking about things like metrics you moved or pain points that you solved can be really important too. I know obviously a lot of you folks, since you are, just about to graduate, or you might be like in, your sophomore, junior year, you did internships that were just a few months long, and it's hard to, move metrics and things like that in a short period of time, but you did add some kind of value to the team, right? So thinking about what value did you add and portray that in the resume rather than just stating what you did. That's what I would say.
Yeah, no, I think our guests will agree, but I'll give them the chance to jump in.
I'll jump in. I'll plus one everything Zaheen said, and definitely pick out those most strongly understood skill sets, because it gets to be like a recipe list at a certain point. And one of the things I often ask candidates when I'm interviewing them, when they do have a long list, is what are the key skills, both technical and non-technical, that you have the most competency in, or if you are your strongest skill set. And that really kind of helps parse it down. So if you ask yourself that when you're putting those key skills onto your resume, then you can kind of narrow it down to a handful of each, or maybe about 7 or 8 that are really important and hopefully align really well with the strongly required or recommended skills in the job description. I'll add a quick note of something I've noticed over the years is if you're putting your LinkedIn URL and you write just LinkedIn and hyperlink it, and the hyperlink breaks, there are 500 million John Does out there. So it's really hard to find you on LinkedIn. And we do open that up when we look at your resume. So simple things like that.
Yeah, I think those little things can make a big difference. So thank you for sharing that.
And I'll jump in here and first plus one everything that Monique and Zaheen said. And to add on to some things that I've seen on resumes, it would definitely be to tailor your resume to what you're applying for. So for a lot of my roles, I do have an emphasis on our technical positions. And while it is fantastic to see a lot of students say excel with languages like C# or Scala, it's not necessarily part of our tech stack. So it isn't necessarily something that we're looking for in a candidate. So if you are able to just take a peek at the job description, making sure that the skills that you are proficient in aligns, or making sure that it's on your resume and aligns a little bit more closely to what we're looking for, then definitely have a little bit more emphasis, show a little bit more love to those skill sets on your resume. That way you can make sure that you have your best foot forward during the process.
Yeah, well stated. I think, many of our students feel kind of at a loss of like, what do I include that's going to make the most impact? And so I think to hear from you about, using the job description as a guide and refining their skills so it's not just a laundry list of everything that they've done, or, making links accessible is huge. So thank you very much for that. Our next question. So some students report being one of thousands to apply to a single internship position, especially at some of these major tech companies. Just curious if there's any recommendations that you have on how applicants could help differentiate themselves. And feel free, whoever wants to start.
I'll start and then I'll pause and let other people, maybe if I have more, I'll add to it. It's a tricky question, and definitely I always encourage applying, even if you're like, oh my gosh, there's probably 5,000 people that applied to this intern role or this new graduate role. I always encourage applying. Making sure, as we kind of talked about, the resume aligns with the job description, looking at those key responsibilities, your skills, and maybe aligning those pretty strongly helps. As far as like, every recruiter is a little bit different. I'll just preface this. I get thousands of black and white resumes that are bullet pointed, which is fantastic and great for technical resumes. But think about leveraging maybe a color that you closely relate with. So for me on my resume, it's like a dark green. I put my name in the headers of my sections in that dark green, and that's the only color I put on there. It's very sparsely put there, but it's something that's a little different on my resume. And I look for that. If you have room on your resume and you're like, okay, what else could I talk about that really helps me stand apart? Something that I look at is fun facts or kind of additional information. So if it's a role that's remote, you need to work autonomously. There was one time that someone talked about how they really love backpacking and hiking. And so to me, knowing some of those skill sets and transferable skills that go into that of keeping your head on a swivel, planning out, and perseverance really kind of informed me a little bit more about yourself as a candidate that might align with a role. So think about your transferable skills, especially if you're coming in and you're like, okay, I don't have any work experience, maybe, In-N-Out Burger or something like that. Think about what you did and how some of those skill sets had an impact with your team. Some of those results, maybe you made those hamburgers faster than anyone else and it improved the wait time so that people were moving through the lines very quickly. I don't know if anyone else has the experience of In-N-Out. There's always a line that wraps around the entire block every time I try and go. So things like that. And I'll pause and let my fellow colleagues out here answer some question of it.
I'll jump in here, and I actually just wanted to bring back something that Zaheen said in his previous answer, which was to be able to communicate your value. And I think that is something that definitely stands out to me when I'm able to see the impact clearly communicated on their resume. So things like showing your metrics on there or any sort of metric on there is helpful. And also being able to showcase any project leadership, that's also really great to see on there, because especially for a lot of my technical positions, being able to see those softer skills on there definitely is a +1. And I think also to add on to some of what you said, Monique, in terms of just extracurriculars or things outside of a general work experience, for me, being able to see things like student clubs or organizations that you're part of, or maybe if some of you are seeking certifications, that really does, for me as a recruiter, it really shows that you are passionate and interested in this career and that you are investing in yourself. And so even if, for example, you might not have an internship under your belt, you can at least showcase some of that experience through your extracurriculars. And it allows myself and also some of the hiring team, such as like hiring managers or other engineers on the team, to be able to see that this is something that you are really interested in, and that we want to have somebody who's passionate on the team, because we'll be able to teach you everything you need to know. So that I highly recommend being able to showcase some of those extracurriculars on there. And I did see a question in here, or maybe I missed it, but I think someone said if your scuba cert is useful. Yes,
Not crazy.
absolutely.
I saw it too. Yeah,
I know we had a lot of messages in the chat here, but yes, definitely add it on there.
I think the only thing I will add is just kind of want to like take a quick step back and say it is really hard to stand out. So be kind to yourself, especially among, thousands of applications. I feel like, like one practical piece of advice, anything you can do to get a referral at a company, especially at, big ones like Amazon or Netflix or Microsoft, if that is really important to you. Especially in the market today, like the application flow is like I've never seen before. It is a lot. And so referrals will help you get higher visibility into, like kind of like the top of the stack. So that would be what I would say. And I'd also say, like, I understand wanting to work at the big brands, obviously very exciting, the big tech companies, Amazon, Microsoft, but try to also just like expand your desires like beyond that, right? Like think about what is actually important to you, like what kind of company do you want to work for? What kind of mission statement do you want to stand behind? If you want to work for Amazon, like why do you want to work for Amazon? Is it just because they're like a big tech company? You will be able to work for the brands hopefully at some point, but it doesn't have to be like your first job out of college is what I will say. There's many, many good companies out there.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I think these are questions we hear from students a lot. And I think Monique mentioned something about like not all recruiters are the same. And so how you may view applications or view resumes might be different. And I really appreciate talking about other things outside of just what's on your resume that you can do to help yourself stand out. And Zaheen, it's like you were placed in the audience because our next question is about referrals. So maybe you can just kind of build on what you were mentioning about that. So the question is, does your company have an employee referral program? And how much weight does a referral carry versus just an external application?
Yeah, I love like referrals and networking. I actually have fun with it, believe it or not. And so our company does have an employee referral program. And I think one thing for you all to know, because I think sometimes people can be afraid or feel like they're bothering someone if they're reaching out for a referral, but just know employees are incentivized to refer you. Like referral bonuses can go for thousands of dollars. And so if they can refer you and you get hired, they could get like a $3,000, $5,000 bonus. Like I think the lowest I've seen is like 1K. And so you could potentially end up doing them a favor too, if they refer you. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. And it's all about the execution too, right? Like when you ask someone, in terms of like how much weight a referral carries, it carries weight, at least in my experience, in terms of visibility and how quickly you are getting to the resume. So we might have hundreds or even thousands of applications. For referrals, we prioritize those at Life360 and at all the previous companies that I've worked for. So even if a referral came in like a month after the job was open, we will put that to the top of the stack. And that's how powerful they can be. Now, at the end of the day, you either have the experience or you don't. You have the transferable experience if you don't. So if you're like if you're trying to apply for a job that you just have no experience, and then that won't help, right? But in terms of visibility, it should definitely help a lot.
Thank you, Zaheen.
I'll jump in real quick on referrals. Definitely Veritas also has a referral program, and same thing as Zaheen said, that we're incentivized to have referrals. We love them. We help put them towards the top of the stack. So they do help quite a bit. I wanted to kind of touch on, maybe I get a lot of questions about how do I get a referral? And I want to just kind of hearken to that on really take some time to connect with the person you're asking to give the referral, because they want to know who you are and be able to best refer you, versus just, you can just get a link or, attach their name to it. But it helps, in my experience, much more if they have a rapport with you. So if you're reaching out on LinkedIn, set up a virtual coffee chat with them for like 15 minutes to ask them about their role, the company, and then approach asking them for a referral versus just typing their name in. And that helps a lot as well, because often I'll go to the person that referred the candidate and ask them about the candidate.
Yeah, good feedback there. Now, if they don't know the candidate very well, they may not have something to say in that conversation. So, Melanie, anything to add?
Yeah, this is interesting because CrowdStrike, we do have a referral program, but it's not eligible, or our intern positions are actually not eligible for the referral program. But that doesn't stop people from still submitting their referrals and wanting to vouch for really bright talent. And so just to piggyback off of what you said, Monique, about reaching out to folks, I highly recommend utilizing platforms like LinkedIn to connect with people and to be able to set up coffee chats or informational interviews, especially because it gives you a better understanding of, one, what the job looks like, or two, what other career opportunities there might be. And also, three, you have a better insight into what the company culture is like. And if this is definitely something that still aligns with what you're looking for after this coffee chat, it never hurts to ask folks to see if they think that you would be a great fit and if they could refer you. Because for us at CrowdStrike, we really do take people's word pretty seriously. And, we want to make sure that we do hire some really awesome people. And so being able to have other folks vouch for you is definitely helpful. But again, I will say that because we do get a lot of applications, the timing of it does matter to us, because of course we want to make sure that we are being mindful of folks who are already being interviewed. But of course, we also want to make sure that we are being mindful of all the other folks who do come in via referrals. So with that, definitely recommend, at least if you do have referrals from folks at CrowdStrike, that they refer you before you apply, because we have a bit of a different timing there. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, this is super helpful. I think, oh, go ahead, Sahin.
So sorry, I just, both Monique and Melanie made me think of something that in terms of reaching out on LinkedIn. So I just think this is an important point to make, because sometimes, you can hear recruiters and your mentors telling you network. And then I think especially as like a new grad, or, if you're in the middle of college, you can feel like, well, I don't know anyone, or like, who do I don't know anyone that works at Amazon or Netflix, or I would encourage you to kind of expand your viewpoint on what your network is. So like, I'll give like an example of a story like this actually just happened yesterday, where I was connecting with a previous direct report of mine. And my sister actually just graduated from UC Davis, so she's on the job hunt herself, and it has been so difficult for her, and I'm trying to kind of get her connected to people. And so he was telling me, oh, there's some, and he doesn't even work at Amazon anymore, but it was one of his previous jobs. And he was saying, yeah, I still have some connections at Amazon, and I think they are opening some entry-level jobs soon. And I was like, hey, can you like check on that for my sister for me, please? And he was like, yeah, of course. And if you think about it, that's 3 degrees of separation from my sister, right? I'm her brother. That's my previous coworker, direct report, and that's his friend, right? And so think about how much you can expand and push your network. Look at the connections you do have on LinkedIn, see who they're connected to. You can do that on LinkedIn, and then ask them for an intro to someone. If they're working for a company that has a role you're qualified for, that can be a good way to get a referral.
Also, I'll put out a nice little supporting plug. One thing that I actually regret not using more and highly recommend to all students and new graduates is connect with your career centers. They have unfathomable amounts of resources and ways to help you connect and network, build your resume, mock interviews. Like, I didn't know how valuable that was when I was a student. So I'll put in that plug in support of all career centers and Santa Clara University's Career Center, because they are there to help you and always excited to help.
Monique.
Yes, lots of that. And if I could just add another note about networking, definitely recommend looking into some of the communities that you're already a part of, whether it is the SU alumni community, or if you're part of another club or honor society. Lots of people will add that to their LinkedIn as well. So if you want to be a little bit more granular in your search, to have more of a warm introduction rather than a cold intro, something that I did was to look up folks, who were at Santa Clara University, who studied finance, but were in an HR position, or that they were also a CF because I was a CF, or they were part of our multicultural center, because then I could find people who had a similar career path or career journey as something that I'm interested in. And that really helped create some stronger foundations for conversations, because I could pick their brain on, you also did X, Y, and Z. How did you get to A, B, and C? Because that's something that I'm interested in. And so it's really a cool network that you have by being here at SU. So definitely take it, use it, run with it, make the most of it.
Yeah, I can't thank you all enough for plugging our services, but also helping reinforce some of the messages that we share with students about networking. It won't surprise anybody that that's part of the process that students, but not just students, anybody who's engaging in a job or internship search is a little hesitant about. So to hear your perspective, I think is helpful to know that this is something that does work. And so, more to come on that. But we do have more questions, so I want to make sure I get to. So most of our students and community members are conscious of the intricacies of applicant tracking systems. And I know, they're not all the same. They have different capabilities and companies use them in different ways. But I'm wondering if you can offer any tips for how students can successfully get their resumes through to the other side.
I can actually jump in here first. And I think this also ties back to, or possibly ties back to the first question that you asked, Andrew, about common mistakes that I've seen. So for CrowdStrike, we use Workday as our applicant tracking system. And one of the first things that I do when I do look into our applications is to see who is eligible. And one of the key factors is graduation date, because we do use our internship as a pipeline for full-time hiring. And so if we do see students who apply who don't meet the graduation date range that we're looking for, we won't be able to consider them just due to the nature of our program. And a common mistake that I see students make is that when we have a field for graduation date, they actually put today's date on accident. And so when I do filter out to see who is eligible based on graduation date, they won't be in there, even if it might say something else on their resume or on their profile. So just being mindful of some of those filters, because it is, I know it's annoying. I filled out plenty of Workday applications myself, so I know how tedious it can be, but it is very important for us to be able to look through your resume a little bit more efficiently.
Awesome, thank you.
So I'll echo what Melanie was saying. We use Workday as well at Veritas Technologies, and making sure you're entering in all the information it's asking for and making sure that your graduation date is on there and correct, because we do have filters that help us. I know at Veritas Technologies, we do look through the resumes, but as we said, thousands and thousands and thousands. So we need a little help. My eyeballs can only handle 8 hours max of resume looking. And we're moving very quickly through those resumes. So I've come into situations where the filter missed someone. And when I went back through again, I was like, why did I miss this? Oh, the graduation date wasn't on there. Or I was looking for a very specific required skill and it wasn't highlighted, or it was misspelled and I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I'll add, so we use Greenhouse at Life360, and there is a function within Greenhouse that allows you to create Boolean searches or search using keywords. And so sometimes if I have like hundreds or even thousands of applications, like Monique was saying, rather than just going through them in order, I will go use that keyword function. And I know from the job description and speaking to the hiring manager, what is most important to them. So if I'm like hiring for a, like, let's say if any of you are applying to marketing roles and I'm looking for someone that has experience with like Facebook ads, I'll type like Facebook ads into the Greenhouse keyword search string, and then it'll pull up all the resumes for me that have that keyword. Now context is important too, right? Like, what did you do with them? Like, were you leading Facebook ad campaigns or were you just contributing to them? Like, obviously, you all will probably just be more in that contribution phase, given you're a bit more junior in your careers right now. But I would think about that, right? Like, look at the job description, see if you have any of those skills and make sure those are being translated onto your resume. But at the same time, there's a balance, right? Like, don't go overkill with that, because it's very obvious when someone is doing it just to gain the ATS. Like, I just had this case a couple of days ago where I'm hiring for a position, and this person changed every single job title that they've had to that position's job title, and they just left the same job, the same job description that they had. And it was like, okay, well, that to me is an automatic no, right? Because you're not actually trying, you're not actually putting thought into it to see if you're qualified for the role. So make sure that you're being thoughtful about it, and tailoring where it makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's helpful. I certainly don't falsify your resume or your job titles. But I think this is really helpful for our students and folks on the call who like know that applicant tracking systems are a thing. It's like kind of this mysterious like gatekeeper. So how do I get, you know, my resume through to the other side? It's good to know that there's, you know, there are ways to do it, but also that like once it's through to the other side, it's how you find them at that point that is also most important. So this is great. Okay, so moving forward, I'm curious if you can share anything about like the typical time to fill rate. And I know that it probably depends on the job that you're recruiting for, but one thing that happens with our students and that they hear a lot is I applied to this job and I haven't heard anything. And so I'm wondering if you can also share like any examples of generally like things that could slow down the process, to help our students know that like if they haven't heard anything, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's over.
I can jump in first. I'm sure we all have different things and different stories to talk about. Well, definitely at Veritas, we move as quickly as we possibly can. So it could be like 2 or 3 weeks. It could be a little longer, like a month or so. Think about the time of year that you're applying and that these roles are open. Yes, if it's like September 1st, we might be moving much more quickly. Or if it's December 20th, most tech companies kind of shut down through the new year. So you might not hear for 2 to 3 weeks because nobody's there. At Veritas, we have like 2 days between the Christmas holiday break and the New Year's break. I'm there and I'm literally just doing like my process paperwork because I can send stuff off to managers, but they're out of office until like the 5th of January. So keep in mind the time of year that you're applying. Yes, we move quickly, but there are some things that happen. And I know during the COVID pandemic, we would have maybe some people unexpectedly get sick. And we did our best to just stay in constant communication with our candidates. I am probably like the messenger and liaison between everyone. So I communicate from the candidate to the hiring manager and their interview team and vice versa. So if something does get slowed down because of an unforeseen event, I myself and my team follows the same suit on being in communication and letting you know, because one of our values is being as transparent as possible about our processes and what's going on.
I'll hop in there too. And I definitely, I think Monique made a really important point about time of year. Like if you put in a job application on December 20th, you might not hear back until after the new year, right? A lot of people are going to be out of office. And then I think more generally speaking, so to answer the original question about time to fill. So at Life 360, it's actually quite quick. It's probably the quickest of all the companies I worked for. From the day that we open a job to when a candidate signs an offer letter, I think last we checked, average around like 35 days. And like Andrew mentioned, it does really depend on the job. Generally, software engineering positions will take longer to fill, you know, more technical roles, higher level positions, like very senior positions, and more junior level roles do tend to get filled a little bit quicker. So in terms of, you know, why you're not hearing back, like what could be happening, I think first of all, it could be just due to the sheer volume of applications too. So what I've been telling folks is, you know, don't feel too bad, because right now there are definitely applications that are qualified that are not getting an interview, because, you know, I'm one person hiring for a role and there's 500 applicants. There will be people that are completely qualified and you will not get an interview. So there's only so much you can do sometimes, right? And so I would say, you know, have those LinkedIn notifications on, because applying to the job quicker, it does help. You know, if you're one of the first few and, you know, you are more likely to be seen first, but that even I think sometimes I see people get discouraged. They'll be like, oh, this job has 300 applications. I'm not even going to apply. Still apply, right? Because I can guarantee you probably more than half of the applications are not qualified. So if you are qualified and the recruiter is strategic about how they're going through the applications, they will hopefully find you. So get in early, but if you don't, it's okay.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, we are also human, so we do appreciate your patience, if there is a delay, because there is just a lot that happens behind the scenes when teams are looking to hire interns. Maybe there might be some just-in-time hires. For us in the recruiting world, that just means potential additional headcount, and finding placement for where this intern will be does take a little bit of time, but it's not something that we really tell folks because we don't really have an official update on it yet. So while we're waiting for those updates, you are also waiting for those updates, and we're kind of in the same boat. But another side would definitely be for some of our roles, we do have some sort of like a batch recruiting cycle. So it's possible that you might be waiting for an extra week or two because we're waiting for other folks in the same batch as you to complete that step. Whether that step is, say, a technical assessment or a technical interview, we want to make sure that all of you are grouped together to overall make the process more efficient for our hiring teams. We've also noticed that, again, depending on the time of year when you do apply, some of our teams are in their busy season, so their availability is limited, whether that comes to scheduling interviews with them or even providing feedback on different resume bundles. It does take a little bit more time from them. And so if that happens, I do my best to communicate to the students that I'm working with that, hey, we're running into a busy season. This might take a few more days than expected, so just hang tight. But if you do have any updates or deadlines that do come in the horizon, definitely communicate that to your recruiter, because at least for my team, we do our best to try to accommodate as best as we can.
Yeah, so many really, really valuable tips here. I think, I think some folks get in the mindset that, I applied and I haven't heard anything, so it's not going anywhere. And we've heard a couple of times here that timing really does make a big difference. And so, when you submit that application is important. And then, Zaheen, it just kind of makes me think of the old saying, like, with the lottery, you can't win if you don't play. If you see that there are 300 applicants, you definitely won't get the job if you don't apply. But it's worth a shot.
And the thing I'll add to that too is, like, sometimes people will see like a job is 30 days old and they're like, oh, I'm not even going to try. I can't tell you how many times I've recruited for a role and the hiring manager, hiring team changes the requirements of the roles like weeks in or a month in, and then we're starting from scratch all over again. So you just never know what's going on in the back end. And so to Andrew's point, like, always apply. If you don't try, you definitely won't get it. So you never know. Yeah.
Love it. This is super helpful, kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit for our students and community members on the call. It actually is a really nice segue to our next question. So we do, not just here at Santa Clara, but in career services across the country, we do encourage students to follow up with recruiters or contacts at a company. So do you recommend students following up to check the status of their candidacy after a certain period of time? And are there ways that you find most appropriate for folks to do that?
Absolutely, yes. For any student that I'm working with for the interview process, I always give them when they can expect to hear back from by me. But I also say, if you don't hear back by this date, feel free to give me a nudge, because it also could just be that they got lost in the shuffle, because my inbox is looking real busy during the recruiting season. So we want to make sure that you don't get lost in the cracks, but unfortunately, sometimes that does happen. So giving your email a little bump is helpful. But if maybe you aren't given a deadline, I usually go by like 2 weeks as my rule of thumb. If I don't hear anything back by 2 weeks, I follow up. But be very kind in your message, be very courteous, and be very we appreciate like any grace you could give us, because again, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And some things we just aren't able to share with you. So that can kind of be misconstrued as potential ghosting, but at least from my team, we promise that we're not ghosting. We're also just waiting for some updates.
Thank you.
I'm gonna plus one everything Melanie said. Yeah, be kind to us because sometimes we're waiting on those updates too. And I use like the 2 weeks kind of measurement on if you haven't heard back, reach out. It kind of depends on the company. I know at Veritas Technologies, we have a university relations inbox, which my counterparts and I all share. We all have our own inboxes, of course. And sometimes that university relations inbox gets a little bit full. So we go through it as quickly as possible. I do want to bring up the note on it can be difficult to manage, and we totally understand the excitement that you have. If you email us every day, we don't always have that update within the next few hours. So think about the optics of asking too much every day. I have had candidates email me and then call me within a few hours asking for an update. And I promise you I'm seeing those emails, but maybe I'm in back-to-back meetings and haven't had a chance to email back. So I always aim to stay in communication as best as possible.
Yeah, I think I really hope that all of you get the chance to work with, good recruiters that are setting expectations with you around timelines. And like what Melanie said, similar to her, what I'll do is I will tell every candidate around when they can expect to hear back from me. And like Melanie, I will say, if you don't hear back from me, within, I don't know, 2 business days, then feel free to check in with me. So at that point, that's easy, right? You have an exact, you know exactly when to reach out, and via email is usually the best. I feel like in terms of when you should do it and the turnaround time, that's a little bit more nuanced. Like it's hard to say because I think sometimes will depend on the stage that you're at within the interviews. So if you have completed a full round, like you've gone to the final stage, you've done the panels, I know like some of the bigger FANG companies, they can take a while to get back to you because they will oftentimes put candidates through a hiring committee. So even if the hiring team has decided like, yes, like we want to hire them, you need to be approved by a committee. That can take a little bit longer, maybe don't pester them like too much. Whereas like smaller companies can have a little bit of flexibility. So in my opinion, if you've completed a final round, candidate experience is really, really important to me. And I have a lot of empathy for the candidate. I like to touch base with a candidate within 24 to 48 hours of them completing their interviews, even if I don't have an update for them in terms of whether we're going to move to an offer or not. And so in my opinion, if you've completed your full round of interviews and you haven't heard anything for 2 days, I think it's okay to email the recruiter and be like, hey, just wanted to check in. I'm still feeling really excited about the opportunity. Now that's different if the recruiter told you, hey, it's going to take me a week to get back to you, then obviously don't email them after 2 days, right? So it really just depends. It's nuanced. It depends on the company, on the situation that you're in. If you're top of funnel, like let's say you've just done the recruiter screen, all recruiters have different styles. Hiring managers have different preferences and how they're working with the recruiter. Sometimes you may have done really well, but the recruiter doesn't want to move you forward yet because they want to screen other candidates too and see how you match up, right? And so I would say if you've done a recruiter screen and you haven't heard back for a few days, I think it's okay to reach out and just check in, right? Like, don't be too pushy. Like what Monique was saying, like we are very busy. Like there's so many candidates to manage, right? Like sometimes we're managing like 50 plus candidates all in one go, but just doing it politely. And if you really want to know, like if you really want a more exact answer, you could also just ask at the end of the call, right? Ask the recruiter, oh, when should I expect to hear back from you? And the recruiter may not know, they may, right? But then at least you know that it's a bit ambiguous and you are able to level set with yourself as well. And you can even ask the recruiter, are you okay with me checking in with you and see how they respond, right? Because all recruiters have their different work styles. A recruiter may say, no, I'll let you know, like don't bug me. Hopefully they don't do that, right? So I would say feel it out, but hopefully those are a couple of helpful examples.
Yeah, this is great. I think it's something we encourage students to do, but I think there are a ton of nuances here, and certainly remembering that our recruiter friends are human beings and have a lot to manage in addition to like changing needs of the business or, you know, meetings and such, I think is really important. So I want to move actually now to some of the questions that came in through the chat, which are amazing. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to them all. So if we don't get to your question, I'm really sorry, but we're operating in a limited amount of time. So one question that came in that I'd be interested to know your viewpoint on. If you have an ADA disability, should you include in your resume or cover letter that you do?
This is up to you if you feel comfortable disclosing it. There will be a section, at least for CrowdStrike's applications, if you do want to disclose it. Granted, the information that you do share does not go to the recruiting team because it is confidential. But if it is something that you do feel comfortable bringing up, especially if it does, or if you think it will impact your interviewing experience, for example, if you do need extra time on an assessment or closed captions or other sort of accommodations, if you do feel comfortable sharing that we want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward. But again, it definitely is up to you, and we hope that you don't feel pressure to share if you don't feel comfortable sharing.
Same. Yeah, it's up to you to disclose, really. And like Melanie said, there is a space in the application process that you can and opt in on that. It is partitioned from us because it is confidential and protected information. And so really we want you to put your best foot forward. If you do choose to disclose, that can help us inform how to best set you up for success too, because we're not here to be like mean or anything like that. We're here to help you and make sure that you're finding your dream job and what makes you happy and successful. And so we're here to facilitate that.
I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, I think those are two very, adequate responses to that. It is sort of a delicate topic, but it sounds like it kind of boils down to your comfort level for disclosing that type of information. We have another one that I think is actually very topical. So the question is, how should students check if the company provides sponsorship for F1 students, or if not, or not enough information? Should it be something they're looking for in the job description, or how should students on OPT or CPT determine whether or not they could be a fit?
I'll jump in and just say, ask. It never hurts to ask, because really you're working on, as I mentioned just a minute ago, finding your dream job. And really a lot of what you needs to be understood by you and the recruiter. So I know at Veritas Technologies, we do have sponsorships, and we're very familiar with interns that are on F1 visas, and how do we operate converting them to full-time after their internship and those types of steps. But really ask, and it also helps inform us how to set you up for success, especially if you are hired on as an intern or a full-time new graduate role. We don't want any surprises, because there's other sides on the back end and processes that could further delay you starting even. So just ask.
And just to add on to what Monique said, if you aren't able to find that information like on the job description or in the FAQ section of the intern recruiting page, hopefully some places you'll be able to find, say, a catch-all university recruiting email, like we do here at CrowdStrike and also at Veritas, like you mentioned, Monique, or even another recruiting contact on the recruiting portal. Feel free to utilize that and be specific in your ask, saying, hey, does this specific position or these positions provide sponsorship for you? Because that way you're able to have a better understanding of whether or not they do, because at least for CrowdStrike, some of our positions do, some of them don't, just because of the nature of some government contracts that we work with. So for us, sometimes it can be not as straight as an answer, but again, doesn't hurt to ask. And depending again on when you apply, say if it is in the winter quarter or spring quarter, definitely bringing this up as soon as possible so we can make sure that you start on time will ensure a much smoother process for your interview journey with us.
Yeah, +1 to both what Monique and Melanie said. I think just asking is just the easiest way to do it. If you're not sure, don't not apply, like still apply, right? Because they may sponsor you, and so you don't want to lose out on that. I would say from what I've heard in my experience, like most bigger tech companies will sponsor, so you should be good there. And hopefully recruiters are asking you as well if you need visa sponsorship. But if they're not, that's when you can ask them. And another thing you can do too, if it's not clearly stated in the job description or the FAQ section, like Melanie said, definitely check those. But sometimes, at least on LinkedIn, there will be this feature on job posts where it says, oh, this company has previously sponsored H-1B or visa, whatever for candidates before. And so that way you'll know, okay, so this company has sponsored before. So that's a good way to check as well. And to Melanie's point as well, yeah, sometimes it's a little bit more nuanced because a company may have the capability to sponsor, but they don't sponsor for every department. So for example, a lot of companies, they'll sponsor engineering roles, but maybe not roles outside of engineering. So it's always important to kind of check in on that and ask.
Yeah, this is super helpful. We have, not just here at Santa Clara, but obviously, nationwide, there's a significant population of our international students that are navigating, difficult job or internship searches and trying to find this information. So getting your perspective there is super helpful. And I'll just add to those that are on the call. We also have a number of resources that are helpful in terms of identifying companies that have previously sponsored H-1B or even hired folks on OPT or CPT. So cool. We have 4 minutes, and I toyed with the idea of like, do we end just a minute early, or can we squeeze in like a lightning round? So I think we'll try and do that. So really quick, just your quickest possible answer. How important is it to attach a cover letter? Is that still something that companies are looking at?
At CrowdStrike, we don't, but I would recommend having a cover letter or a note of some sort if you might, for example, have 2 majors that are completely unrelated to each other, or if you have a bunch of different experiences on your resume and it might not be clear as to what you're really interested in. That's where I think a cover letter would help provide some clarity to the recruiter and the hiring manager to reinforce what you're interested in. Otherwise, I personally don't think it's necessary. Especially at CrowdStrike, because we don't ask for it, but other companies are definitely different, and so recommend following their guidelines when you apply.
Love it. Thank you.
I have to say, I'm pretty anti-cover letter. Like I really want to respect candidates' time. I think a resume suffices, like honestly, and like there is like you get what you need from the resume. I just want to see if you have the experience that you have. I personally like, yeah, I don't read cover letters, even if they're there, like there is no time for that. And so obviously if a company is requiring it, you have to, but yeah, I personally don't find them particularly important.
Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. If the company requires it, then that company requires it. And my personal opinion on cover letters, I've only read one in the entire time that I have been a recruiter, and that was purely because I had no clue why that person applied to the role. But my philosophy is you could suffice the same statement when you're pivoting, doing a whole career pivot to a different industry, or if you have 2 unrelated majors, you could do the same cover letter in a 2 or 3 sentence objective statement at the top of your resume. And then it's all in one place. You don't have to make sure you uploaded 2 different documents. Also, we're very busy. And I think we've all kind of echoed how many applications we look at, how many resumes we read. This is another thing to read, then we're less likely to want to read it. So I urge you to really think about what would you put in that cover letter and put it in 2 to 3 sentences as an objective statement or kind of summary right at the top of your resume. And that helps us understand.
Amazing. Yes, thank you guys so much. It's a question we hear a lot, and obviously it's dependent on the company and the position, the industry. But to hear the perspective of a recruiter on that, I think is very helpful. So I'd love to give like a virtual round of applause to our panelists and for sharing their insight. I also want to share a major shout out to the Santa Clara University Career Center team who helped not only set this up, but operate the back end and help answer questions. And we're really grateful for everyone who attended. We hope that you learned something. Our next summer workshop is August 30th from 12 to 1. It's updating your resume and LinkedIn profiles. We hope to see you there. And like we said, this session has been recorded. And so if you want to go back and take a look, we'll make sure it's made available to you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Thank
Thank you
everybody.
very much. Great advice.
Thank you.
Feel free to add me on LinkedIn.
Yes, I dropped my LinkedIn in there, although lots of people saying thank you. Let us know if you want to connect.
Thanks, everybody. This is where we need like our exit music.
I know. My waiting music is Frank Sinatra. So,
Yeah.
That's a good vibe.
it is a good vibe. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. I have to pivot to a staff meeting, so have a
Please,
wonderful day.
yes.
And we'll be in
We know
contact.
you're busy, so thanks so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Bye.
Yeah. All right. Take care, folks. As always, it was really wonderful to see you again.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Melanie.
Take care.
All right, folks, I'm going to close the Zoom room and end our recording. Thank you.
Did you want to like leave it open for a minute or two?